Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Hello, and welcome to Black Marriage Therapy, BMT for short. Here we become students of marriage in order to create healthy, long-lasting relationships. I'm your host, Kristen Smith, and in today's episode, we discuss pursuing marriage when you have no role models. For this episode, I will be joined by my husband, Junior Smith. Are you thinking of getting married but fear that you may not be successful because you didn't have a good example? Maybe you had no example at all, a really negative example, or you saw a marriage but it wasn't a healthy marriage. If you want to build a marriage and feel that your toolbox is empty or you have the wrong tools, it is still possible to be successful in marriage and have a healthy, long-lasting relationship. In this episode, Junior and I discuss non-examples of marriage, our positive and negative role models, the importance of role models in marriage, and tips that can help you pursue marriage despite the absence of role models. Without further ado, I would like to reintroduce to the podcast my husband, Junior Smith.
Hello, welcome. Glad to be back here on the show one more time. The views, the ratings, statistics, analytics said that people love me. So I'm back. I'm back to be more vulnerable.
Who said people love you?
That was what the analytics say. People really appreciate. I'm a breath of fresh air. So I'm here to breathe again.
Don't breathe on my mic, first of all. Second of all, analytics didn't say anything about that. So relax, okay? Thank you for, coming back to my platform. Just remember that.
I like what you've done with the place, though. It's very. I'm actually afraid of doing this episode with you because just the level you've taken this podcast to is really. It's great to see what you're doing. So keep going.
Thank you. So let's not dilly dally. All right. The podcast is 30 minutes. Sharp is a tight 30.
Wow.
This episode might be a little bit longer because, you're joining me, and that's okay. Also for, the avid listeners, it's going to be a little bit different than the format that you may be used to. Usually I, have things very cut and dry and, I like things orderly, but Junior, I think, brings the fun and spontaneity to my life. So it's going to be a little bit more spontaneous. Just setting expectations here. Ready? Mm-hmm. So first, we're going to start off with our initial experience with marriage and kind of how it shaped our view of marriage. So, and the fact that we didn't really have role models to a healthy marriage when we first started out. So, I talked about this a lot on, the podcast and my experience with my first experience with marriage. Usually that for people, that's parents, right? If your parents were married, that's usually your first view of marriage. So for me, my parents got divorced at my parents got separated when I was 9 years old. And I think their divorce was like official. I feel like I was like 13 or something. Like, divorce is expensive, bruh. Just letting y'all know, divorce is not cheap. And it's just a lot of work. It's a lot of hoopla that goes with it. So they were separated at 9 and divorced at 13, something around that age, something like that, before I was in high school. So for me, I feel like a lot of my childhood was the end of their divorce, like when it was all kind of like spiraling out.
Okay.
So I don't remember like happy
times.
times. Yeah, because I was already so young. So I have 4 siblings and I'm the youngest. So my sister seen the entire thing, right? She's there from jump from Adam. My eldest sister, and then my brothers, they have a different experience of it. But for me, if they're getting separated at 9, I only got consciousness starting at what, 3, 4?
Yeah.
Right. So I really only got like 3, 4 solid good,
Yeah, 3 good years.
yeah, 3 good years of like, seeing what their relationship was like. So for me, I think a majority of what I saw was negative.
Unhealthy.
Yeah, like the unhealthy stuff.
Do you remember unhealthy stuff when you were younger? Like, do you remember?
I do.
You remember seeing them fight?
Yes. I saw them fight a lot.
Dang.
I saw them fight a lot. And like the biggest one was just like it was near physical.
So you feel the tension,
Yeah.
and you were in your room,
No, we were all out there.
and they were arguing right, just like that.
Yeah,
about to throw blows.
Oh yeah, it was near physical. But I think that wasn't the impact that it had on me. I think the way they did divorce had a bigger impact on me than their actual marriage.
Okay.
Right? Because like their divorce was so toxic.
Well, what happened after the divorce was toxic.
No.
The way your mom was speaking to you
Yeah.
about your father.
No, but that's what I'm saying. That was that period of like separation till divorce. Because so what happened was after they got separated, it got nasty.
Yeah.
Then they got divorced and then it just got quiet. Like they just act like they didn't exist. Like each other didn't exist. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but that like 4 or 5 years, let me see, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, like 5 years of like before the papers were signed, I feel like it was just nasty.
But on both sides or just one side?
I mean, in my experience, I feel like it was one side.
Yeah, I think even after the divorce, it was still one side.
It was still one side, but I'm not gonna,
Yeah, it takes 2 to tango.
It takes 2 to tango, and I do think my dad was quiet on certain things that maybe he shouldn't have been as quiet on. I feel like my dad could have fought a little bit harder. There's certain things I think my dad could have done, even though he wasn't as hot like my mom, because my mom was hothead.
Yeah.
So I give him that. So he wasn't like, out there bickering and doing all that stuff, but he was definitely quiet, and not as active as he could have been in regards to his children and other things like that, right? Because he took a back seat, which I get because if somebody is fiery, you don't want to.
These are your kids. You can't just be complicit.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. So, so I learned more about their divorce than their marriage because I didn't spend a lot of time really seeing how they function married.
I didn't notice how similar our stories were.
Oh, so yeah, I saw my mom like do the wifely things, cook, clean, and stuff like that. And I saw my dad do the dad things, right? Work, and he was a fun, cool dad too. He played and did all those things.
Wow.
But I think, so for me, seeing that negative divorce and marriage, it didn't turn me off to marriage.
No, yeah, me neither.
It didn't turn me off to marriage. It was just like, oh, I am not ever going to do this. Like I think that's how I thought. Like, so again, I was really young, but I just thought to myself, you know what? I'm never going to, I just don't ever want to be in this position.
Yes.
But I always felt like, oh, I do want to get married. And I kind of took away from it, like, even though my parents kind of had a wild ride, I still want to get married, but I don't want to do it like them.
Yeah.
But what it left me with was no tools, right? Because I'm like, oh, I still want to get married. I don't want to do it like them, but
I don't know how to do it.
Junior always says, like, don't describe something by what it's not.
Can't compile enough non-examples to be efficient example.
Okay.
Like, you need to have an example
With the words. Yes, thank you.
You need to have an example so people can, people can understand your vision and know what you're trying to say.
The non-example of my parents' marriage was not enough for me to have an example. oh, I don't want to do that. So now I'm going to go do marriage. How?
Yeah.
How?
I'm going to go the opposite direction, which usually always takes you right back to what you're trying to escape.
Come on.
Because you're focused on it. So
Come on.
You're going to slowly but surely kind of ebb that way until you repeat that.
Yeah.
So
that was my experience with, marriage and how it kind of like affected my perspective on my experience with my parents' marriage. That affected how I thought about marriage.
And so ours is the same. It's similar.
You think so?
Yeah, for sure. So, long story short, TLDR is that you had a marriage that you observed that wasn't the best example, but it didn't deter you from wanting to be married.
What is TLDR?
Too long, didn't read. The post be too long.
Why?
I didn't read
Why
it.
do you know all this stuff? Like all these little
TLDR, man. That's
you're
what people
like
say.
you're low key a white girl on the inside.
No.
You acronym
That's
everything.
what people. No, I didn't know. I didn't make the acronym. That's an acronym. Look it up. That's what people say. That's what people text.
Go ahead, TLDR.
After a long post. But so yeah, it was interesting that you said you observed like the turning point of your parents' marriage, and you were left with no tools. The marriage that I observed was not a marriage at all. I did not observe a marriage.
Yeah.
Right. So my story is, growing up, the relationship between my mom and my dad was an abusive one. And so I did not observe love. I did not observe hugs. I did not see them kiss. I did not hear them say, I love you.
You never seen any type of affection?
I didn't see any type of affection.
Oh, wow.
I didn't see them buy each other gifts, celebrate anniversaries, celebrate each other's birthday.
Oh, wow.
I didn't see anything. So the only resemblance of a marriage was that my mom cooked and cleaned and like put his food out on the table and like try to call him, a nickname every now and then, and basically did what he told her to do. And so that's the only thing I had. That's what I was holding on to when I got married.
I have a quick question then. Do you think that a marriage can be a successful marriage without all those things that you named? I only ask that because in Caribbean culture, we're both from Caribbean background. Sometimes it's different. You know what I'm saying?
No, you can't have, without love?
No, not without the love, but without the anniversaries and the gifts and the, affection and stuff like that. Just on a cultural...
No,
okay.
No, I mean, that's going to be a partnership. Because it's cold without all those things I mentioned.
Okay.
It's cold.
Okay.
So yeah, no, I was holding on to like, okay, I'm in a marriage when I have a wife that like feeds me and like cleans. That's it. That's all I had.
Yeah.
My dad was such a bad, was such a good non-example. I couldn't use anything that he showed me, or else I'd be laying my hands on people. So I had literally had to just start from scratch. So, but I told myself I'm gonna get married. I'm just gonna be careful with who I get married to, or try to be more careful. I don't want to say my mom wasn't careful. It was actually a friend that my dad was interested in. My mom's friend.
Yeah.
My mom's friend was not interested in him, and so she passed him along to my mom.
Dang.
Church friend.
It be
church
your friends.
sister.
It be your friends.
My mom went on a date with him.
Wow.
And that's how they met. That's how they got started. But yeah, I know. I said I'm gonna get married, but I'm gonna just make sure that the person I marry is gonna be that person for life. Like, and that's why I think it's super important. Like, even in our relationship, I try my best to like keep the friendship alive, because I want this to be consistent through life. Because I want you to be consistent through life. So
even as a man, you didn't have any fears with like, given your father's background, in marriage, you didn't have any fears going, like, as far as like, making that big commitment and being able to like be a good man and stuff? Like being a man or a husband? Like get married?
A husband. No. I didn't have any fears. Unfortunately, I just did exactly what my dad did. My dad got married and had kids, and he was abusive. And he would tell us he's better than his dad, who couldn't even buy shoes, who refused to buy shoes to put on his feet. He bought me plenty of shoes, and he thought he was doing better. Yeah. And I just said, hey, I'm gonna just be better than that guy. So that was my plan, like just be better than him. Yeah. And that's foolish. Like I said before earlier, like you're so focused on not becoming somebody, you don't realize that you're slowly making a 180 right back to that person.
Yeah,
because you're focusing on them.
Yeah.
Whatever you focus on, that's what you're gonna become. And so slowly but surely, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna just like do the things my dad did, but just be better. But instead of like being a man that would put my hands on my wife, I was just super stringent. I had no flexibility. I thought that's better than what my dad did. He was like enforcing his rules with his hands and with his mouth. I just like said no, and that meant no. And I wasn't able to listen to reason or listen to, my wife trying to influence me. But I thought that was better. So no, I didn't. I thought I had it down packed getting married.
Oh, just don't be like him.
Yeah, that was my plan.
Dang, we the same for real.
Yeah, it was a terrible plan. Yeah.
I think it's interesting that we kind of had the same thing in mind, right? Which is like, okay, the non-example, but we had no tools in our toolbox. Like we had nothing.
Negative tools.
We had nothing to go off of. But that's not true, is it, for you?
No.
Because, and I don't think that's totally true for me either, because outside of my parents' relationship, as I started getting older and became a teenager, there was one relationship, and that was actually my youth pastor and his wife. Their relationship was, I think, a positive example. And to be honest, it probably was the only positive example that I had. I think just love.
Yeah.
At that time, it was hard. I know they had a lot of hardships, but they just loved each other.
Yeah. And
they were kind to each other. And they talked to each other.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything like super special, like he was overly romantic and, she was...
Because it was real. That's why.
I guess so.
Because it was real, it was legitimate.
I guess so. Maybe that's what it was. But that was my only other example where I felt like...
I didn't realize how much of a privilege it is that we were able to be exposed to real, legitimate relationships.
Yeah.
Because, my parent life... Not my parent life, but my life at home was rough and terrible.
Yeah.
Right? But I was exposed to so many other healthy relationships, primarily at church, because that's where I spent a lot of my time. And that's where I really got the chance to like see people on a daily basis, right? In their relationships. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Sunday, Friday, going over to their house and seeing how they treat their wife at home.
Yeah,
how they treat their husband at home.
Yeah.
When they have guests over. So I was exposed, man, to a lot of healthy relationships via church leaders, at my church.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize, like, just simply being exposed to the right thing can be enough. You don't know how much or how little exposure one person may need to be able to be like, oh, that's it. And I'm going to be able to, like, kind of shift that way.
Yeah.
So you said you only had one example.
I did. Yeah, just one.
Yeah, and that's all. That's all you needed.
Yeah, I think so.
What's so interesting? When you see it done right, you remember. You take a pause.
Yeah.
That's why I said the comment earlier. Like, just one exposure to one good example can be all it takes to help a person really learn what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Right? Because they need to see it modeled for them.
Yes.
Right? So, you're living your life right, or you're treating your wife right, or you're loving on your kids. Somebody sees that in the park and they're like, oh, I got to stop and notice this is different. And when you see the right thing, you can't help but stop and notice it.
Yeah, I think definitely like role models in marriage is kind of like, they kind of help smooth the path before you have to walk it, right? Because sometimes, there's glass and shards and rocks and all this stuff on the path, right? And the people ahead of you, they walk through that already.
Yes.
Right? So they kind of smoothen it out. And if you're following them, or if you're not necessarily to the T of everything that they're doing, but really trying to learn from them and gain the wisdom from them, it can help your marriage to just be a little bit smoother.
It can.
Right? Because, hey, this didn't work, this worked. Let me try this out.
Yeah, no, for sure. They say like, oh, well, sex is going to be a sensitive subject, so you want to be honest about it, and you want to be sensitive or consider the other person's feelings when you talk about it.
Yeah.
There you go. They just helped you avoid like 20 pitfalls because you was about to go in there and say like, hey, listen, let me tell you something. What you thought it was, it ain't. And that would have blown up in your face.
Yeah. I have one more question before we move on to the tips. Can you talk about specifically men and having no role models in marriage? Because I think that as a woman, sometimes when you hear a man come from a broken home or divorce home, you may think immediately that they have commitment issues, that they have communication issues, that they have all these different type of issues. Now, let me tell you guys, truthfully, women have these same problems, but what we have found is that women are often the ones that seek help. Just looking at my podcast statistics, the majority of the listeners are women. There's also data that shows that women are the ones that buy the majority of self-help books. Women are typically searching for answers and searching for growth and betterment. And men, not that they don't want to, but I don't think they have to. And because of that, they kind of just sometimes could be static. But can you talk to or speak to specifically men who may not have role models in marriage and how that may affect them, and maybe speak to their fears and how they can overcome that? I don't know. I'm just going to lob it to you and kind of let you just
general,
fill in the gaps. Fill in
messy lob. I have to like stick my hand in and decipher.
Don't do me like that.
You did me like that.
What you mean?
It's okay. I got
you
babe.
good, babe. You could pick it up quick.
No, but so no, I mean it's a tragedy.
It is.
I'm not gonna say anything that you don't already know.
Like what? No, say all the things we need to know from the horse's mouth.
I think that's legit. I think that's what's killing our generation.
Oh, wow.
Honestly, I'm not just saying that. The fact that men are growing up with little to no example of how to be the kind of father that we need to be, the kind of father that we need now, like the kind of father that creates culture for his household, right? Rather than just providing the money, the kind of father that is concerned with their kids' spirituality, their wife's spirituality, the kind of father that's looking into building gifts.
And
right?
husband.
And husband, right?
Yeah.
The kind of father that is sacrificial, right? Like Jesus Christ loved the church, the kind of father that's willing to sacrifice, like put themselves last, right? And put the needs of other people, like not just financially, like give their effort.
But how are they supposed to do that if they've never seen
That's
it?
what I'm saying. Like it's such a complicated role to
walk
as a father. And I'm learning more about this each and every single day.
And as a husband, you in full daddy mode right now.
Man, because I guess, married 10 years, the husband thing is...
It's what?
No, having conversations about the challenges of being a husband is like, it's kind of died down now.
For you?
Yeah, it's a little died down now.
But that's what I'm saying. Speak what you know, the wisdom you have, speak it to others. That's what I'm asking you.
So I didn't have an example in the house of what a good husband's supposed to look like. So I didn't know how to care for a woman or even put the needs of someone else before my own, right? I grew up with my twin sister. We're the same age. I didn't have like a younger brother or sister to look after.
Yeah.
Me being the only male, I was fed, people cooked for me. They washed my clothes. They did stuff like that. So, I mean, when I got older, I was learning to cook and things like that. But I was kind of put into the mindset that I would have a wife that would come along and do these things for me.
Yeah.
Right. And I would just be served.
Yeah.
And so that was my idea of being a husband. So it's not until I got a rude reality check from my wife, who was vocal, who's independent, who's not going to let someone just dominate over her. She spoke to me and let me know, hey, I don't feel like you're a partner. I don't feel like I can trust you. And it's because of the love that you have for me that I felt that let me say, okay, let me look into this. It was extremely difficult. I was thrown off guard, but a little part of me said, man, I think she's telling the truth. Because I just didn't feel like I was prepared enough to be a husband. So like if I had to rate myself, I was like, there's no way I'm functioning at 100%. So let me look into it. And because you were so sensitive when you said it, you know, I know we talk a lot about men and their egos, but it's true, right? You catch more flies with honey. I'm just being real. Yeah. So you were so sensitive about it, and you were being like, just letting your heart flow. So I said, let me look into this. And when I did, I realized like I was not holding my weight. I was like telling myself like, I'm helping you with the house, or I'm helping you with, you know. Yeah. I'm helping.
You were just helping me.
I'm just helping you.
Yeah. You're not a part of it.
I'm not a part of this. Like, I don't live here and consume water and run up the electricity bill.
Yeah.
So when I found out I had that great deficit, that's when I had to start looking for exposure and examples that I can use today, because I can't like just try to remember in my mind like, oh, I remember that guy back in my church, how he did things. I can't do things the way he did it. That's not going to help me. So
you allowed yourself to be vulnerable. Like you said you were honest with yourself, because you had to acknowledge the deficit that you had.
Yeah.
And if you didn't do that, and if you weren't honest, then you wouldn't even have room to grow.
No, for sure. Definitely. I mean, honestly, that wasn't the first time you spoke to me about something along those lines, but I just kind of tuned you out because I didn't want to be vulnerable. I wasn't ready to be vulnerable, which is unfortunate because at that point we were married for years at that point, and I still wasn't even vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know, with you, much less myself. But I think at that time when you spoke to me, it was just your vulnerability. You were vulnerable first, honestly. That's what led me to be vulnerable. You kind of opened up that space.
Yeah.
So I was like, if you finna be real, I'm gonna be real. Because you had to be real to say that to my face. To tell me like, I don't think you're a partner. Like, I don't think I could trust you to have a kid with you. I was like, what? But, you know, it got me thinking for sure, to say the least. So I had to fill that deficit. You know, I had to try to find examples of what is it like for a man to love a woman and treat her right. It's not just buying her things. 'Cause I remember at that time I was buying you things. A lot of things. And that's not even your love language. No. I had to learn that. Like, what's a love language?
Yeah.
And so a lot of the teachings I got was from this book called The Samurai Husband. So yeah, I actually joined.
Dropping the gems. We like books on this episode, on this podcast. We like books.
That bibliotherapy. It's a great book. You should pick it up. The Samurai Husband. It was given to me by someone at our church.
Yeah.
They actually had a men's group, and we actually read the book together. It was a whole bunch of husbands, and we would share after we'd read each chapter. We'd talk about applying it. And this book said the craziest thing. It said the most radical thing I've ever heard. Remember, I'm coming from a family home where the man is served, right?
Yes.
100%.
He's the king.
He's the king, and he doesn't do any. By the way, my dad didn't work.
Yeah.
At least your dad was working.
Yeah.
So he felt like he earned that.
Yeah. Okay.
No, my dad was able to feel like he earned that without earning it.
Wow.
And he would say to himself, that's how much of a man he was.
Wow.
That he can earn something without earning it. However, this book said you're supposed to do your duties to your wife 100% independent of what she does. So that means you give her 100%, expecting zero in return, because that's how Christ loved the church. And that was the first chapter.
Yeah.
That was like page 1, first chapter. And I was just taken aback.
Wow.
I was like, wow, we're really starting with that. 100%. Because before that, I was basing my responsibilities and the way I function based off of you and how you function. So the way you treat me is how I treat you. It all depends on you. And I thought that was okay. It's like a give and a get, like a flow. But there was like, ain't no more flow. 100%, no matter what. Okay? Of course, you're not going to like tolerate disrespect or whatever.
Of course, yeah.
But the book even said, you know, went as far as to say, but if you're loving this woman 100%, why would she want to disrespect you? You know what I mean? You're loving on her 100% like Christ did. So this stuff was difficult to put into practice, but I had a group of guys who were also putting it into practice. And of course, the main thing they were telling us is like, pray about it. When you feel like you can't do it, you're not supposed to be able to do it alone. So pray about it. So I was praying. My prayer life actually increased during that time. So I was just willing to just change. I was willing to have someone influence me.
Ooh, that's hard, Junior. People don't like to change, Junior. People don't like to change.
Especially men, I'll tell you the truth. For sure. Even if we don't know 100%, we're like, I'm good where I'm at.
Yeah.
No, but I wanted to change, though. I really did. I wanted to get to the bottom of this marriage thing and how to love a wife.
Wow.
Because I know I didn't know.
Yeah.
I knew. Right? I guess that was my privilege. You know, it's hard to look at a bad situation and find something good of it. from that situation, from watching my mom and my dad, I knew nothing about marriage and loving a wife. I knew I couldn't pretend.
Wow.
So I was like, let me go get the knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Right? A wise man knows that he knows nothing. So I knew at least, I was like, I need to get information. So yeah, so I walked that through. We finished the book, and the book changed my life.
Wow.
100%.
Can I say though, after that, I noticed the change almost immediately. Like that season of our life completely radically changed our relationship for the better. And I was just like, I was almost taken aback, like, what's happening? Like, I don't know what to do with this, but it was so good. And I think this is the first time I'm hearing you say that you really had to be vulnerable and honest with your deficit in order for you to learn the tools necessary for a healthy relationship. And I think that is like major key alert here. You know, if you're listening, like, you know, that's a tip in itself. We didn't even get to the tips yet, but that's a tip in itself. Being able to just be honest, radically honest with yourself, and recognizing those deficits in order for you to move forward, because you're going against the grain. And I would like to say, for me specifically as a woman, what I realized is that I didn't know how to be a woman. Like, I didn't have a role model of womanhood. Like, and guys, this is 10 years in, and this is me now still trying to figure out what womanhood means. Wow. And I remember my mom always telling me, I didn't have a mom, you have a mom. And just like your dad would say to you, like, oh, my dad was trash, so you have it better. Yeah. My mom was saying she had no mother at all, no role model. So the fact that she was there was a positive for me. But the fact that she had no mother and no woman to walk her through womanhood, she could not walk me through womanhood. So I think that just from being, I mean, before I even got to wife, I didn't know how to be a woman. And I think that was where my deficit was. So it's just like I leaned, I think, on my personality, on intellect, on like, you know, just who I am. And it kind of helped me, kind of steer me through the way. Yeah. But it's now, as I'm continuing to marriage, guys, this is 10 years in, bro. The lessons don't stop. No. All right. It just keeps coming. And it's now that I'm really leaning into my femininity. I'm leaning into like vulnerability and being soft, right? And being open, right? And standing tall as a woman, using my voice, like all these different things that I'm just like now learning into what womanhood is. And now I'm learning it and literally trying to teach it at the same time, because I have 2 daughters. Yes. Right. So it's like, it's complicated, but I think that's where me lacking in a role model kind of affected our marriage. Like, I did the best that I could with what I had, but I see how I was holding back from you a part of myself because I didn't know that part of myself. Yes. Right. So you said you didn't know how to love a woman. I didn't know how to be fully woman to be fully wife. Okay. Right. Because I feel like now I'm adding that part of myself to our marriage. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. I agree for sure. I think 10 years in, we're still learning. I think you like to say healthy marriage starts with healthy individuals. Yeah. And so we're always growing as individuals. That's going to be reflected in our marriage. Facts. So, I mean, the more we can get in tune and key with ourselves, with our true selves, right, the richer our relationship will become.
I love it. That was good, babe. Thank you. Okay, so to cap the episode, we are going to talk about how do you pursue marriage with no role models. We're just going to give you 4 quick tips and kind of explain them a little bit. But, you know, these are just the quick tips. There's a lot more work to do. So if you're a person who may be thinking about marriage, right, and you didn't have role models or you had a negative experience, you know, but you are still curious about marriage, right? You haven't completely wrote off marriage, then these tips might help you to lean in a little bit closer and to maybe think about getting married. So the first tip is you have to be hyper vigilant because you're coming in at a deficit.
Okay.
Right. So, I'm so glad that you shared about your deficit and honesty, because guys, let's just be honest. You just have to be honest with yourself.
Yes.
The fact that you are coming from either a negative experience or no experience whatsoever, right? Like maybe your parents weren't married, maybe you were raised by a single parent, or maybe you had like a negative experience like we did. You are coming in on a deficit. You have a non-example, but you have no tools in your toolbox to access building a marriage. If a marriage is a house and you got an empty toolbox, how are you going to build your marriage, right? So because of that deficit, you have to be hyper vigilant, which means that I don't want you to be anxious or whatever, but that just means that you are in the mindset of, I have to be working. I have to be in the right mind. I have to be aware. I have to be all those different things. You need those things in order for you to even get on the starting line.
Yes.
Because you're not on the starting line. You're at -5, -10, whatever.
Yeah.
Right? So you just need those basic knowledge, those basic tools, the wherewithal, the diligence, the discipline to be like, you know what? This is what I need to keep.
Take initiative.
Take initiative. There you go.
For sure.
Yeah. The second tip is have a positive outlook on marriage, because it is possible. Sometimes because we have a negative experience in marriage, we may deem all marriage to be like that, right? So let's say you saw your daddy cheating on your mom, right? You saw your daddy cheating on your mom, and now you say, all niggas cheat, or all dudes cheat, or all women cheat, or whatever, whatever the scenario is. You may think that it's impossible to be faithful in marriage because you never saw faithfulness in marriage, right? So it's important that if you are trying and striving for a healthy, long-lasting relationship, that you change your perspective. You have to be able to let go of those negative examples and hope and see more positive examples. You have to change your mind, because if you're, like Junior said, if you're focusing on, well, it's impossible to be faithful in marriage, then that's all you're going to be focusing on. That's what you're putting your energy towards, instead of putting your energy towards, how do I be faithful in marriage, right? Instead of, marriage is deemed to be unfaithful.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So the third tip that I have is, don't live in a fantasy. You have to ground yourself in reality. So opposite to the person who may have a negative outlook on marriage, sometimes if you don't have a view of marriage, or you've never seen a marriage, you fantasize about marriage. Okay. So you may think that marriage is like the movies, and like marriage is like the TV shows, and it's like romantic and it's blissful, and they're supposed to sweep you off your feet, and you're supposed to, bend and knee.
Yourself?
No.
You talk about you. I cannot relate.
No. But some people do. Yeah. Some people is like, well, I've never seen marriage before. I don't know what it looked like, but on the movies, this is how it looked like on TV. Sure. Or the celebrities, this is what it looks like.
For sure.
So they think, or
social media.
Social media. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Social media, kind of twist like what marriage is supposed to look like. So, but that's a fantasy. Because yes, that's a part of marriage, the romance and the love and, roses and butterflies and all that stuff. But there's a whole nother side of marriage called work.
Hard work.
Called discipline.
Hard work.
Called choosing, will, desire, all those things. So it's important that you take yourself out of the fantasy. And this goes back to what Junior says, being honest, being aware, and saying, well, what do I really think about marriage? And is those things based in reality? So you have to take yourself out of the fantasy, base yourself, ground yourself in reality in order for you to pursue marriage with the full picture.
Yes.
Because what happens is when you go into marriage with a bubble of fantasy and that bubble get popped, you're like, oh, divorce me now.
Yeah.
Divorce me now, because it's supposed to be roses and glitter. I didn't get no glitter. My roses are white. I wanted them to be red.
Yeah.
And now you're upset and you feel like you've been robbed. But what you did is set an expectation that was false. And now because the expectation is not met, you feel like you've been robbed and, blah, 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 all this stuff. And you on your way to divorce.
Yeah, no.
So reality is key.
Exactly. There's an offense there because your expectation wasn't met. And so you have one or two things. You have the other person trying to constantly meet your expectations. But if you're not based in reality, then you're insatiable. So you're always going to want more or bigger. You're going to want more. You'll never be satisfied.
Yeah.
Or you have the other person that you just turn off. You just burn out, right? That person just becomes disgusted, right? Because they realize that you're a black hole, a never-ending pit, and they just like, hey, I'm out.
Yeah.
But, either way, it's not healthy. So to speak about, to kind of combine your points with one of my points, you were saying earlier that like a person who has a deficit has to recognize that they have that deficit and has to work hard in order to make up that deficit.
Yeah.
And you were saying stay in reality.
Yes.
Right? So my point would be to get exposed. So for those people who may not have had a great example of what it's like to love a woman, love a man, right? To be in a healthy relationship. Because, there's lots of relationships. People have been in like 10 bad relationships before they get into one good one.
Yeah.
Right? And they're messing it up. You feel me? Because they don't know how to even sustain a good relationship.
Yeah.
Right? They think, I'll just give that person whatever they want. Not realizing that they need to speak up in order for the relationship to work. Or set boundaries, things like that. So I want you to get exposed. And listen, get exposed is as vague and as general as you need it to be. As long as it's a source of truth, right? Something that you can trust.
Healthy relationships.
Yes.
I got to put that out there.
That could be a content creator, right? That could be black love. That could be, a book. Right? Get exposed to what a healthy relationship should look like, right? There's so many resources available to you where you can actually fill that deficit, right? With truth, with information.
Yes.
You don't have to go and wander the world and try to piece it together yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Because what I've experienced is sometimes when people have a deficit, they want to be the curators of their own knowledge and like be gatekeepers. Like, I'm going to take this, I'm going to leave that, and whatever like that. That takes way too long. By the time you're done, you're 40 years old and gray, right? You've only learned half of what you should have learned if you just opened yourself up to a source that you trust, right? To get on the fast track, right? Because like you said, it's a deficit. We're trying to build up as quickly as possible. So, get exposed.
So I'm going to add some of those resources that he was talking about, getting help and getting educated. The fact that you're listening to this podcast, that's already a step forward. There's also many other podcasts that, speak about marriage, as long as they're not spewing that toxic, relationship type of stuff. We're talking about healthy relationships.
Or self-righteous stuff, because that sells too, like hotcakes. People are like, you're right all the time. Your name is wrong. Your last name is wrong. First name never.
So you guys heard me talk about John Gottman. He has done the research. He has science-based principles on marriage, y'all. You can't get no better than that. This dude has spent years researching how marriages are successful, right? He has a book called The Seven Principles of Marriage that makes marriage work, something like that. Everything will be in the show notes for sure. Brene Brown, she's not on marriage, but let me tell you something. If you want to explore your soul, okay?
For your soul.
If you want to explore your soul and if you want to get deep and aware of your emotions and all these different type of things, Brene Brown is your girl, all right? Also, Tim Keller, that's if you're Christian. He has more of a Christian perspective on marriage. He wrote the book, The Meaning of Marriage. And then we talked about the Black Love series, Black Love doc series. They have, I think, 4 or 5 seasons.
Wow.
But it's literally just a whole bunch of couples talking about their stories, talking about their good, their bad, their ugly, and how they made it work.
Yes.
Right. And they even had a couple who got divorced, who took who did the interview and end up getting a divorce, but still you can learn from people who get divorced too. Right. So
and Kirk Franklin just started one.
Oh no, it's not Kirk Franklin. It's Kevin and Melissa Fredericks. They wrote a book, Marriage is Hard. No, Marriage Be Hard.
And they interviewed Kirk Franklin.
Kirk Franklin. Yeah. So Kevin Fredericks and Melissa Fredericks, or Kev on Stage, y'all know him by Kev on Stage. So there's tons and tons and tons of resources out here.
Ooh, H-man.
But again, all this will be in the show notes. I'm going to try to put as many resources as I can in the show notes. As long as you are willing, as long as you're open, like Junior said, and honest and realizing that deficit, then there is tons and tons and tons of information for you to help you to move forward towards a healthy, long-lasting relationship. So to end that, I just want to say thank you to my amazing husband, okay, for helping me out with this episode. And if you like what you're hearing, be sure to rate the podcast. If you like Junior on this podcast,
be sure to tell him.
No, stop what you're doing right now. Go to your go to the rating section of this podcast and rate the podcast, you know?
How does that have anything to do with me?
What do you mean?
You just used me to get them to rate the podcast for you?
Well, you know.
End the show.
Thank you all for tuning into this episode of Black Marriage Therapy. Remember, all books, studies, or websites mentioned will be in the show notes. If you haven't yet, follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Black Marriage Therapy. Thanks again for listening. See you again soon.